This weekend it is Le Mans week, another visit to the Circuit de la Sarthe in France for one of the world's most grueling races. An 8-mile loop of French public roads and some purpose-built sections of racetrack as well that results in, well, one of the most grueling races in the world. And Le Mans is actually one of my favourite tracks to run when it comes to sim racing. I don't know why it is, it just is. Probably because you can spend a good amount of time seeing how fast you can make stuff go, much like how Peugeot did in the 80s with that Project 400 car, a car designed to do 250 miles an hour down the Mulsanne, and nothing else. It's a race that requires not just a fast car, but a bulletproof one as well. Take the Mazda 787B for instance. It was nowhere near as quick as the other cars around it, but it outlasted them through being more reliable. The stars aligned for that 1991 race, but some would call it a fluke. And speaking of flukes, 2016 happened. I don't need to tell you what the story is about because I've just mentioned 2016 and luck. Well, I mean, the title of the video also tells you what it's about, but that's beside the point, but I'll say it anyway. This is the time that Toyota was about to win the race. And then didn't win the race. Trigger warning. Obviously. It was also a race of firsts, and a slight race of controversy, and yes, that's how we say that word in English. This year saw the first time a safer barrier was installed at a European track, and the 24-hour race was held on the weekend of the 18th and 19th of June 2016, which meant it clashed with that year's European Grand Prix in Baku. This in turn trapped one of the previous winners, Nico Hülkenberg, in his Formula 1 seat, and it meant he wasn't able to be in two places at once, which then led to accusations by fans that Bernie Ecclestone had deliberately organised the European Grand Prix to be on the same weekend as Le Mans, to stop Formula 1 drivers following Hülkenberg and doing one-off appearances. And the accusations weren't baseless either, because Daniel Ricciardo had said that he'd been looking for a slot on the Le Mans grid for 2015, and the whole thing just seemed a bit, well, convenient. An active F1 driver wins Le Mans for the first time since 1991, and then the year after, the race is scheduled on the same day as a Formula 1 Grand Prix, or a Formula 1 Grand Prix is scheduled on the same day as Le Mans. And Ricciardo wasn't the only one looking for a drive. There were actually three, at least, actively looking. Another was obviously one of the winners, Nico Hülkenberg, and the other was Fernando Alonso. But Red Bull blocked Ricciardo from doing it, and Honda blocked Alonso from doing it because Alonso was looking at driving for Toyota, Honda's racing rivals. Hülkenberg claimed that it was more than just those three though. But it wasn't just the drivers, but there was the press as well. Because of Hülkenberg being at Le Mans in 2015, many F1 journalists were over in France the previous June and writing reports on how he was doing. And at the same time, they were writing about how awesome and experienced Le Mans was, and writing about how F1 could learn from endurance racing in regards to the tyres that F1 uses. You know, these designed to destroy ones. And that didn't sit well with F1's Dark Lord of the Sith. And then in the middle of this, you've got the wars between the fan bases. You've got the F1 snobs saying, well, I'll be watching the race in Baku because who wants to watch the VW show on the other side? And at the same time, you've got the endurance snobs saying, well, why would I watch a race where I know who's going to win? Yeah, despite the race being won by the Germans for the last God knows how long. But, you know, the VW show did hold some sort of weight, because between 2004 and 2014, Audi had won every year except in 2009 when Peugeot won, and the previous year had been won by Porsche with a 1-2 in the legendary 919. Even though Toyota was on the grid, it's still pretty much the Porsche and Audi show, and Toyota would need to pull something out the bag to be in a shot of winning. And Toyota was sort of halfway there after qualifying. The two TS050s were third and fourth on the grid for the 24 hours, and they were nearly a full second ahead of the diesel Audis in behind. Although some might argue the Audis were struggling with mechanical gremlins and were off the pace because of that, rather than Toyotas having genuine pace. The second session though was a washout, but some cars did improve on their times before the rain came. And when the track did dry out, teams used it as a test session instead. And another first happened because of the rain. It was the first Le Mans 24 hours to start behind the safety car, and the safety car was out for about 57 minutes, which, you know, is a very long time, so we might as well call this the 23 hours of Le Mans instead. When the race finally got going, the two Audis managed to clear the number 5 Toyota, being driven at the time by Sebastian Buemi, and there was also the number 6 Toyota of Mike Conway, who managed to overtake both Porsches ahead of him and get into the lead. But then Audi took a gamble on the conditions and stuck Lotterer onto dry tyres that cycled him through into first place, but then had to stop because he got problems with the turbo on his diesel. The Toyotas were able to spend less time in the pits compared to the Porsches, saving enough fuel for one extra lap per stint to try and make one less stop towards the end, and by the 6-hour mark the Toyota was just under 14 seconds behind the lead Porsche, which in the case of a race like this is, well, nothing really. Audi was slipping back, and to make matters worse they were shown the meatball flags in order to make repairs to the number lighting system on their cars, and that cost the Audis 6 minutes apiece, or a lap and a half-ish. So really, the fight was between Toyota and Porsche for the overall win. Toyota now had some decent pace. By morning the two Toyotas had got into first and second and had been pulling away from the number 2 Porsche, and this is with Kobayashi's car having floor damage after some light contact with a GTE during the night. But after an off at karting corner, which is the second right-hander in the Porsche curve section, he had to come in and get that floor fixed. It lost him 3 laps to the other Toyota, but was solidly in third given how far back the Audis were. But that's not to say Porsche had been enjoying a faultless race either, because Bernhard's car had problems with the water pump and required a 2-hour fix, and the other car driven by Mark Lieb had to make a stop after picking up a slow puncture on some gravel that had been dragged onto the track. By the time morning came round, Neil Yarny could not keep up with the Toyotas at all. Why not? I'm not sure, but I think it might be because Porsche had put themselves onto that same strategy Toyota was on and couldn't go as fast, but maybe that's something for more endurance-oriented people to answer. There were 2 laps remaining. Nakajima had a 70-second lead, and winning was just a case of keeping the Toyota on the track. But there was something wrong. As the lead Toyota came onto the Mulsanne straight, totally unnoticed by the commentators, the car was only doing 200 kilometers an hour, on a straight where it should have been doing 200 miles an hour. And it was making a strange sound as well. And over the radio, Nakajima started yelling, "I'm accelerating, but I have no power." Between the first Mulsanne chicane and Indianapolis, Nakajima had lost 32 seconds to Yarny. On the TV broadcast, it cuts to the Porsche garage, and Mark Webber says to one of the other Porsche drivers, "I don't think they're going to finish. Watch." And then there's other theories getting lobbed around in the commentary box, like they were trying to engineer a photo finish at the end, and other stuff like that, or try and run down the clock so they don't have to do that extra lap. But yeah, it was just wishful thinking at that point. Attention then turned to the number 2 Porsche that was chasing. That 70-second lead had been evaporated, and there was still a lap left on the clock. If the Toyota was trying to run it down, it was never going to do it in a million years without losing the place, so you would have thought it would have got a stomp on and then tried to finish the next lap with some gap to spare. But the number 6 that was behind the number 5 also slowed down, and the Porsche cleared the 6 just before the Ford chicanes, just as the camera cuts to the number 5 crawling over the start line and stopping just beyond it. With just 3 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock, the Porsche took the lead. The Porsche crews went ballistic. Lieb and Dumas were on the floor cuddling each other and crying. Webber and Hartley were open-mouthed and couldn't believe what they just witnessed, while the crowds at the track also went mental. 23 hours, 56 minutes and 40 seconds that car had been running in the race, and it broke down with literally 1 lap to spare. Meanwhile at Toyota, they weren't moving any more than the car was. There's a shot of these 3 Japanese blokes with the pit crew behind them just standing there perfectly still, unable to believe what had happened. But you'd think then, because it had broken down so close to the end, that it would still have finished in 3rd place given the fact that the Audi was so far behind. Right? No. Because the Toyota did not complete the final lap in less than 6 minutes. Therefore, it was not classified as finishing. Porsche took the win right at the death in what is often called the most thrilling Le Mans finish in history, along with the 1966 event where the car that won didn't even win. What had happened was the airline connector between the turbo and the cooler had caused turbo loss, and then some jiggery-pokery from the team allowed the car to get going again, but not within the 6 minutes required by the rules. And it was also the wrong Porsche that won. Porsche wanted Webber's car to win, but that car had finished 13th overall and 38 laps behind the leader. Toyota would have to wait for another year. The following year was just as crazy. Problems for the entire LMP1 field meant that an LMP2 entered by Jackie Chan almost won the race outright, but Porsche was able to salvage another late victory, although not as late as the 2016 race anyway. So then, a look at the absolute tragic race for Toyota at the 2016 24 Hours at Le Mans. If this has been something new for you, or indeed if it has opened up some old wounds, then do give the video a like. And if you want to see more from this channel, then do get subscribed if you're not already, and also get the bell on so you're always notified of any future content. Massive thanks to the kind folk at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help support me at a more personal level, you can help out by following the link in the description, which will also contain links to Discord and also to my socials. So until next time, I've been Aidan Millward. Have a cracking day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.